tonight from Italy, a very inspiring story of a Gambian who was struggling with his eyes, went to Italy, and it's something that was very refreshing and an inspirational documentary. We now have a very interesting subject that is relatively quite new in Kenya, but it is a very growing field, and we have some very interesting panelists, moderators who are actually my seniors, as I also practice mediation and arbitration, and I'm very passionate on this subject, and we look forward to what I think is going to be the next very interesting discussion for the next 40 minutes. We have Dr. Kenneth Wyne, who will be moderating this session, will be supported by FRANCESCO MACRI, all the way from Italy, JACQUELINE WAIHENYA, who is our Deputy Chair at the CIAB Kenya, and GICHURU KIPLAGAT, who is in the Sports Tribunal. I'll hand over now to the moderator to take it up from there.
Big thank you to you, Asif, always for putting up together this wonderful festival conference that we enjoy annually. I think it's a highlight for the sports industry in Kenya and beyond. I am very pleased to be moderating a wonderful session with a high level of panelists with rich experience that for all this discussion that we're going to have. My name is Dr. Kenneth Wyne, as you've heard. More importantly, I'd like to introduce my panelists, who are, some of them have joined virtually, some are there physically. We have FRANCESCO MACRI. He's certainly not a new figure to those of us in the sports industry. It's a name that we've come across. He's a CAS arbitrator since 2016, based in Rome with the Sports Union Law, former counsel of the Italian football players. Those of you who are looking forward to the World Cup, this is a gentleman is associated with, shall I say, one of the popular teams, expected to perform very well. Of course, he has been intimately involved with the Italian Liga series, with the players and the clubs. And it's a very great pleasure to have you with us, FRANCESCO. As we say in Kenya, karibu sana. Welcome very much. We do have JACQUELINE WAIHENYA, senior arbitrator, also a senior mediator, chartered arbitrator. She is with us physically. I can see her quick image right there. We were actually together at a function yesterday that she was moderating around mediation and the region of East Africa. She's an advocate, one of the very few, if not the only, FIFA accredited mediators in our region of East Africa. She has, of course, been appointed to various bodies. Sits as a vice chair of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. She is a member of the National Council of the Administration of Justice Standing Committee on Civil Justice Reform, and she's a renowned expert in ADR. So it's a great pleasure to have you with us. I'm certain that as you make your introductory remarks, you will have one or two additions to say to the audience that are joining us. We also have GICHURU KIPLAGAT. Karibu sana, GICHURU. I can see he's joined us virtually, an advocate with a keen interest in sports, and specifically sports dispute resolution. He's been involved in that area for more than a decade. More importantly, he's a member of the Sports Dispute Tribunal. I think a number of us have engaged with the chairman in that regard, and certainly with you indirectly. He's also a member of the Africa Zone Radio Results Management Panel since 2016. It's always a pleasure to have you with us, Bwana GICHURU. Karibu sana. I want to invite the panelists to make introductory remarks, and I'd like them to focus their attention on the question of disputes. So I think it's important to sketch a context before we even talk about arbitration and mediation. What's the nature of disputes in the sports industry? I think most of the viewers, participants will be acquainted with the glory of sports, the competition, the athlete, the awards, the medals. But there is an unspoken side to all of this, which is the dispute. Would you like just to give us a quick sketch of the reality and the nature of these disputes? We'll start with you, Francesco. When we speak about disputes in the sports industry, what comes to mind? What, in your personal engagement, has been the nature of these disputes? Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. I hope you can hear me well. I think I see that all the mic is on, and so because I'm not very keen in these devices. Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for having me, and it's a pleasure to meet you and all the panelists. And starting from the very beginning, it was quite strange because I connected 2 minutes early, and it was quite strange for me to listen speaking in Italian, and so it was quite a welcoming attendee. But okay, just move very quickly to your question. I think that arbitrations in sports is quite mandatory, because sports has some sports disputes have some characteristics that call for a quick and enforceable decision, and it is important in my point of view that when players, clubs, agents, and so on come to an arbitral tribunal, what they want, from my point of view, is a decision, is a quick decision, and because, as you know, sport have quite a fixed time frame, like the football market, like the starting of a new competition. So it is important, in my view, that an arbitral tribunal gives an effective decision, and a decision that can be enforceable within the organization. Of course, before an arbitral tribunal, you can bring every kind of dispute, starting from labor dispute to commercial dispute. Let me speak about sponsorship, also contracts, and so on, or also disciplinary. Just think about all the doping disputes that you can find. Especially during the Olympic Games, as you know, and what most I think labor and disciplinary dispute. I think that now this is the time frame where we can when we have to move, and of course, as you know, most of the countries have an arbitral system, an arbitral judicial system to solve the sports disputes. Also in Kenya, I read that also in Kenya there is an arbitral tribunal, and quite all the European countries have some have this kind of proceedings, and as far as I know, also in other parts of the world. Let me think about India, Asia, and so on. So as you can see, the arbitral proceedings are quite used, all the part of the world, and that but they have some differences between the commercial arbitration, so that is the most common kind of arbitration that we can face too. And but I don't know if I can speak about these differences, but maybe we can talk later, and then we can listen before to the other panelists. Let me just let me know.
I think, Francesco, you've set us off on a very, very powerful note. We will come back to those differences. So that's something I think our audience will want to know. Our participants are waiting to hear about these different processes, specifically you as a CASA arbitrator, what that would look like. I would like to pick up from where you left. So you have, of course, talked about the different arena in which these disputes occur: labor disputes, professional associations, athlete with a club, commercial disputes, contracts, disciplinary issues around doping and so forth. And one of the things that has stood out is the two words you've used, that the sports industry wants quick and effective decisions. And now quickness is very much associated with arbitration. I'd like to probably get another angle on effective decisions and what that could mean for a mediator. Let me invite Jacqueline. Jackie, at this point, been a nice access for you to speak about what mediation offers for the sports industry. Often it's touted as a win-win situation, and there are other significant areas that speak to relationships and so forth. In your experience as a FIFA mediator, what have you observed the impact of mediation to be on the sports industry? Over to you, Jackie. I hope you can hear us loud and clear.
Yes, I can. Thank you so much, Dr. Wyne, and it is really a privilege to be a part of this panel, and I do thank the Kenya KISSF for this film festival that they are carrying out at the moment. It's really a great opportunity to appreciate what the sportsmen and women are doing, where they are at, and where they hope to go. And I do believe that mediation is a win-win for all the sports people, men and women. And one of the reasons is because mediation is a very voluntary process. We require parties to be ready and present and willing to take part in the process. The beauty about mediation is that each party gets an opportunity to lay out the issues that they have and to do it in a confidential arena. So let me explain what mediation is, and hopefully also try and bring it and tie it in with sport so that we can see what the benefits of this new dispute resolution process brings to sport. So in my opinion, and this is the best mediation definition that I like to use, is that a mediator is a third party who is neutral, who helps parties to discuss and ventilate the issues that are creating a problem or a conflict or a dispute between them. And once they talk and they talk it out, they take control over the process. And what the mediator essentially does is to keep the parties talking and quickly move them to a point where they can either resolve the matter or whatever is at hand, or otherwise settle the issue. Those are two different terminologies which mean almost the same thing. Settling a matter means we have agreed, even to disagree, we have agreed in part, or we have agreed totally. To resolve a matter means that we have brought the matter to a close and we have found the final solution and we're able to move forth from that position. Now, within the sports arena, sports is very specialized in very many ways. We have people who are competing. They're competing for a title. They're competing for a goal. They're competing for an award. And, the period for competing is usually very brief. What people don't see is that there is a backstory always. That champion that you see taking the trophy has probably trained from the time they were very young, 3 years old, 4 years old, and you have examples around the world of leading sportsmen and women who started when they were very young. So in the process of developing their skill, developing their abilities, they grow from that little small boy, that little small girl, and they take part in schools, in clubs, and eventually they become part of national, regional, or even international competitions. So there's potential for conflict in all those different steps. And that is where dispute resolution of any kind, whether it is mediation or arbitration, or even a court process, comes into play. And what happens is that when a sport begins to take root, earlier on I was watching the fencing, I think she's called Alexandra, they were talking about fencing. That is a very new sport in Kenya. Tennis is also fairly new, but we have champions who are making it around the world. But you have sports that go all the way up to, say, for instance, football, which when we have the World Cup in December, is going to be watched by half the world's population. In that whole process, you find that they are individuals who support teams, who are supplying the teams, who are building stadiums, who are creating environments to enable the sports to take place. There are TV stations, there's media, there's entertainment. There's a whole host of different individuals, personalities, businesses, and that is where you find a great cocktail for participation in dispute resolution. Each one wants to make sure that their part in that whole big cog, in that machine, is working flawlessly, but the reality is that it does not always happen that way. For the sportsman and the sportswoman, they also, in many sports, they have a brief lifespan within which they can participate in sports, when they are at their peak, when they can expect to go all the way to the Olympics. So they also have an interest in having their disputes resolved. So like Francisco said, commercial disputes lend themselves to arbitration. So does mediation. Mediation is quicker, it is faster. It is sometimes thought of as a younger cousin or the small sister, small brother to arbitration. But the voluntariness and the confidentiality that it also brings to the process gives it an opportunity to thrive. What I might say is that for the framework in sports mediation currently is still under the Court of Arbitration of Sport. There are CAS mediation rules, and we borrow heavily from them, even in Kenya, where we have the Sports Act, which creates a sports tribunal, and the sports tribunal also has created rules which have now adopted mediation. The one thing that I just want to say is that though there are disputes that lend themselves to resolution through mediation and arbitration, there are two categories of disputes that have to be taken care of by either a regulatory authority or by a sports federation, and these have to do with anti-doping. There are regulators who are created specifically to deal with sports doping, and for corruption as well, and for disciplinary issues, that those ones almost invariably have to be taken to the sports federation. And the sports federations, they are represented in the countries, they are required not to be subject to the government influence, and what they do is they resolve the disputes within the framework of the federation. So there are a lot of moving parts, there are a lot of players in the process, and at each stage, at each level, even if it's at grassroots level, there is a role for mediation to play, so long as, one, we have trained sports mediators. In Kenya, we do not have a large group of sports mediators, but it is present. We also need to train the sportsmen and women to let them first know there is this process, it's available, and it can be adapted and used regardless of what issue is at hand. And it really lends itself because this is a dispute you can deal with behind closed doors without having to deal with there's media. When media comes in, it becomes entertainment. It could turn out to be memes, or it could also turn out to be a circus. And sometimes with media pressure, with fan pressure, sportsmen and women may even be barred or find it difficult to participate in their sport. So dispute resolution is a key part, a key aspect of sports, and it needs to be given more prominence and given more light so that all the players can know that even if it is a small little girl, a teenager, an adolescent who is part of a sports team and they have issues. I think when you talk about labor, there are questions about, will I make it to the team? Was I cut out of the team for legitimate reasons? Or am I being paid sufficiently? And am I getting the contract that I require? Am I getting the terms that I require? So the first step is to recommend that dispute resolution be made a key part of the commercial agreements that are made between the sportsmen and women, their clubs, as well as their federations. I could go on and on, Ken. Let me stop there so that we could also hear from the other panelists and as I wait to hear your other questions. But it really is an exciting area, and we're looking forward to continuing participating in this space. Thanks, Dr.
Thank you very much, Jack. Thank you. Very, very elaborate and comprehensive. And certainly it lays the ground for us to engage GICHURU being an advocate, I think, on one hand, and of course, a member of the tribunal. So those two dockets that you put on are associated with the formal justice system. They're very formal. What does this all mean then for you as a member of the sports tribunal? What avenues are there for arbitration and mediation to take place? I think most of us view the tribunal as we view several other tribunals that operate, that it has its formal, it has aspects of legalese. To what extent do those take away from the discussion that we have, and to what extent does it actually serve what Francesco earlier said, the idea of quick decisions and effective decisions? Karibu sana, Bwana GICHURU.
Thank you so much, Wyne. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Kenya International Sports Film Festival for this opportunity. And just to put context into your question, I think perhaps I can just highlight where the tribunal gets its jurisdictional mandate statutorily. Of course, and perhaps this probably Mr. Francesco has come to note, all tribunals in Kenya are considered to be part of the judiciary under the Constitution. But for the Sports Dispute Tribunal, to which I am privileged to sit as a member, draws its jurisdiction from the Sports Act, which came into force in 2013. And I know, Wayne, we didn't have, it's happening for the first time in the history of our country that we're having a sports disputes tribunal. Before, matters related to sports disputes were largely left to the federations, but of course, parties that would be unhappy with the outcome would definitely have the opportunity to move to the High Court to challenge whatever decisions they were unhappy with on appeal. But the 2013 Sports Act gives us jurisdiction to hear disputes on, so let me just say we have first an appellate jurisdiction that we exercise, and secondly we have original jurisdiction that we also exercise under the Act. For appellate jurisdiction, what happens is for disputes related to sports, first have to be dealt with at the federation level and come to us on appeal. For that, those are now cases that fall under the appellate jurisdiction perspective. For original jurisdiction, these are matters that relate to the sports registrar's acts of omission or commission under the Sports Act. Remember, the sports registrar under the Sports Act registers sports organizations and sporting bodies and regulates the industry. So if a party is unhappy with acts of omission or commission of the registrar, they can file a case with us and in the first instance, and in that sense, we exercise our original jurisdiction. And we handle quite a number of cases and varied cases related to disciplinary decisions of the federations, cases related to leaving out a sportsman or lady out of a squad or team that has been selected to participate in international sporting events. And it also allows us to, the Sporting Act also allows us to hear disputes that it calls other sporting related disputes. And of course, these are varied. We have labor disputes, we have disputes to do with elections, disputes to do with agency issues. But yet again, the Sports Act allows us to, in fact, it's interesting, this is provided under the law, to hear matters under the alternative dispute resolution methods. And so ADR for us is key, and this is where arbitration, negotiations, and mediation and other forms of ADR mechanisms come into fore. And I must say we have tried our level best to exercise our jurisdiction or to resolve these disputes using these methods, because they are faster, they are cost effective. The confidential nature of these forms of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms are manifold, and the fact that it's voluntary, it's a voluntary process makes it all the more appealing and attractive. We have had quite a number of cases that have gone through, especially mediation, through the tribunal. And because in Kenya we believe in the rule of sub judice, I will discuss, or rather I'll mention three that have been finalized. One that related to AFC Leopards Football Club. It was a dispute that touched on issues of elections, of office bearers. There were two factions that were in dispute, and when it came before the commission, the tribunal, I'm sorry, we set up a mediation team made up of members of the tribunal. This was set up by our chairman. So it was a very interesting experience, because when you talk of mediation, you let the parties take charge of the process. You are a neutral arbiter or neutral arbiter in that sense, and allow the parties to, reduce the disputes in writing. I know one of the ways that we do this is we start with the easier issues and then finish off with the most difficult ones. And we successfully mediated the AFC Leopards elections dispute case. I think this was the first case we handled as a tribunal. We came into existence in 2014, and I think that was in the year 2015 when we did this. We also handled a similar case with the Kenya National Paralympics Committee. It was also, interestingly, an elections dispute. We also were able to sit down with the faction. There were two factions again, and we agreed on a timetable of elections and the minimum rules to apply. And this was coming from them. Ours was a facilitative role. And we finalized this case, as well as the Swimming Federation case that had similar issues. So I think the benefits of mediation and arbitration are are many. As I said, apart from the length of time it takes and the fact that it's inexpensive, it's very flexible. You're not bound by the rules of evidence or curtailed in a straitjacket manner by, processes under the law or technicalities. And so it makes it easy for parties to sit down and agree and come out with win-win outcomes, as you alluded to earlier on in your opening remarks, Mr. Wyne. But let me just conclude by saying we have additional jurisdiction on doping matters that came, that was given to the SDT, or the Sports Dispute Tribunal, in the year 2016 via the Anti-Doping Act. And it's a different ball game altogether, because we have the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya that is in charge of regulating the industry again in terms of doping, but also bringing cases on doping before us for us to hear and make decisions. It's still a growing area, and we are happy that most of the decisions we've made have not been appealed against by CAS, and I'm happy Mr. FRANCESCO is here, appealed to CAS. I think we are doing very well in terms of. I'm sorry, I had to stop because of a truck that was passing, but I'm sorry about that. I hope you can hear me, but I think let me stop at that, because I know, Mr. Wyne, you have more issues you want us to discuss. Thank you so much. What? Sorry, Mr. Wyne, we can't hear you.
My apologies, my sincere apologies. I was muted. That happens. Thankfully, you stopped me. You can go on like that for about 10, 15 minutes without anyone prompting you. So I actually wanted to bring in FRANCESCO. There are a couple of questions that I have typed for both Jackie and GICHURU. You may want to respond to them either on chat because of time, but if we get the opportunity, you may want to vocalize your responses. FRANCESCO, you talked about processes, and you also started to move into the question of, shall I say, exposure. So we're hearing a lot about arbitration. I think the work of CAS, I'm not sure whether the jury is still out on this one, but what is the extent that the user is aware of CAS processes and what actually CAS does? What is the level of education that you've been able to put across, the different jurisdictions? So I'd like to invite you probably just to give us a quick sum up of the different arbitral processes that you would come under CAS, and also the level of exposure that of the user across the globe in this regard. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kenneth, for this for the question, because of course it is the core of the CAS proceedings, the value and the exposure of the proceeding before CAS. Let me start telling you that why does sports choose arbitration? So of course we already talk about quickness and of course also cost efficiency, because just starting an arbitration proceeding, an arbitral proceeding before CAS, you already know the cost, and so this is important to advise your clients, and it is important for the players, for the club that approach CAS. So cost efficiency, I think, is another issue that we don't have to forget. But moving to the proceeding before CAS, as you know, CAS is the highest court of sports in the world, and we all the stakeholders decided to give particular efficiency to the CAS proceedings for a number of reasons that more or less we already talked about. But it is important to note that sports arbitration is a system of universal mandatory arbitration, and usually the sport bodies prohibit recourse to national courts, and moreover they impose sanction on the participant if they breach this rule, and if they go to national court instead of CAS. And this is important because we can create a system of jurisprudence, and all the players and clubs, so all the subjects that approach CAS already know more or less which is the jurisprudence of CAS, and we do have to remember that also in a difference between the national court, as you asked me, in addition, usually we can find arbitrators that are specialists in that sport, so they have a deep competence in this particular issues that can rise from a sports dispute. So again, it is important to create this system of let me call private justice, but of course it is not a private justice, as you can say, but it is a closed justice, and it is a justice that we can that we will leave to CAS. And on the other side, I must admit that this can create, of course, some issues, some problem with the right of the players, with the right of the clubs that have to file a proceeding before CAS and not before a national court. This is I don't know. I can't say if this is a breach of right. As you may know, there is a consistent debate before the European Court of Justice, because if I am, for example, if I am a young player and then I want to start to play football, of course I have to affiliate to my club, and my club, of course, is affiliated to the federation of that relevant country. And in the rule of the statute of that federation, for sure there is a clause that that oblige you to submit your dispute before CAS. So you can say to me, you can ask to me, I didn't sign any clause, any arbitration clause, like in commercial arbitration, and I understand that this is a problem. This is a problem of awareness, because of the players, or the clubs, or the stakeholders of the sports system must know that CAS is your tribunal. So must know that all your sports dispute, when it, of course it is a dispute of international level, because I'm not speaking about Kenyan dispute or Italian dispute, because I'm talking about international dispute. So you must know that when you're going to start your sport career, maybe that you are going to one day maybe you are going to you will be obliged to go to CAS, before CAS, and not before your national court. But, and this is important, this issue created a lot of debates, a lot of recourse to national courts. In this moment, I can remember what we usually called with my colleague at CAS the Pechstein saga. It was a nice skater and a female ice skater that went to, after CAS, went to a national court in Germany and the European Court of Justice, because she objected to this clause, to this arbitral clause that obliged her to go to CAS. That said, if we start our discussion knowing and be conscious that our sports proceedings, let me say, sports-related proceedings, are most of all CAS proceedings. It just to answer to your question that I'm reading on the table. It is important from my point of view, correct education. It is important from my point of view that an arbitrator has that kind of education, an education that moves from, of course, move from the CAS code to the Swiss law, because we don't have to forget that CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, is based in Lausanne, and then as a CAS arbitrator, we have to be aware of also of the application or not application of Swiss law, and this is important for an education of an arbitrator. But at the same time, it is important also for the education of a sports lawyer, because if you are going to move in this fantastic world of sport, you of course you have to know the CAS code,
yes,
the law, and
maybe allow me to interject. What I sense is the questions are building up. And that already tells you that the level of engagement and the points of interest and the material that you're sharing is of high value. That, I think, for the organizers might suggest also that in the future we have, with this level of interest, a greater portion of time allocated to us. The questions are on the chat. Unfortunately, Francesco, we are not there to have coffee with participants and continue, but we will find a way of giving you the responses of the panelists on these different areas. Several people are asking about the future of a sportsman and whether a sportsman is adequate within the context of mediation because of...
I understand that I'm too much passionate, so...
yeah, absolutely. So, but allow me to say a very, very, very big thank you to our most able panelists. Thank you very much, Francesco, joining us all the way from Italy and for the rich knowledge you shared. Thank you very much, GICHURU. I think you also saw a couple of questions in the chat. We will find a way of sharing your responses to those questions. And last but not least, thank you very much to Jackie, who is physically present in the auditorium at the festival. And a very big thank you to the organizers for putting this session together. We hope that we can have more deliberations around it in the coming film festivals ahead. It obviously draws a lot of interest and discussion, but kudos to you all. Thank you very much, Bwana Asif Karim, for what you've done. On a light note, Jackie, tennis is fairly grounded, and living testimony of that is Mr. Asif Karim. He's, I think, the only sportsman that I know who has actually competed and won medals in two sporting courts, two national sporting courts, both tennis and cricket. So this is, I wish we could see a visual of him, but I always think he's a legend in and of his own right because of that. Thank you, and a very, very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you.